You never play with my freedom, boo-boo. Not today. Like a little backpack that was deflated. I was gonna say like my boobs, but I'm trying to be nicer to myself in 2020, so.
I'm trying to be a cool dad. That's my 2020 New Year resolution.
Hold on to your tits. Wait a second, we're about to get right into the mukbang, but I just want to give you guys a quick announcement. In and Out of Sleep merch campaign was up for exactly 2 weeks, exactly 14 days from, I believe, December 24th to January 6th. We ended up in exactly 2 weeks raising, I'm reading this because it's a very exact number, $30,430.69. I don't really know what to say. I just want to quickly read you guys a quick statement just so you guys know where the money is going towards. All $30,000 and some change is going to be helping Stomp Out Bullying, which is a nonprofit organization, and their work has helped over 5 million students resolve bullying and cyberbullying situations. Their help chat line has assisted over 100,000 students and saved the lives of over 2,000. Through their various networks, they've saved a total of over 6,000 lives, and those numbers increase daily. So I don't even.
Are you shaking?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, I've never experienced this feeling before, so thank you. You guys helped so many people. Since we're already in the spirit of all of this, like, celebrating, I do want to mention Days for Girls, because if you guys have been with me since I launched this a couple months ago, this is my Biz merch line. A portion of the proceeds have always been donated towards Days for Girls, which is a nonprofit that I really am passionate about. If you guys have never heard about them, please check them out. I'm gonna leave all of the links in the description. They help a lot of girls get access to reusable and sanitary feminine care. It sounds crazy, but I feel like most of us girls have sat in class or sat at work one day and realized, oh my gosh, I think I'm bleeding, but you realize you don't have any pads or tampons and you don't want to ruin your jeans. But there's actually a lot of girls out there that don't have that. They never had it, and so they don't even get to go to school when they're bleeding. The founder actually shared a story where she went to Africa, and a lot of the girls were forced to sit in their rooms on pieces of cardboard while they were bleeding, and people would have to bring them food because they didn't want them to, you know. There's just something to be said about girls needing to feel that dignity that comes with having a period. It's a beautiful thing. It's something that we should all learn to appreciate, but it's really hard when that's what your life is. We also raised through our Biz merch sales $5,000 for Days for Girls, which is already so crazy. And I've talked enough, so thank you guys, and let's get back into the mukbang. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie, and today we are back with another mukbang! Woo! Guys! Oh no, I have to burp. So this is what happens when I haven't filmed mukbang in a couple days and I don't know what I want to eat and I'm craving everything. So here on this side, I have 4 packs of SHIN LITE ramen. And then here on this side, I have what's called this is my first time trying it. It's New Zealand Scampi. But when I hear Scampi, I think of shrimp or prawn, but it's actually a family of the clawed lobsters. Yeah, welcome to Animal Planet.
So we're eating lobsters,
So
right?
we're eating mini lobsters or giant shrimp. I feel like giant shrimp sounds cooler, so I'm gonna go with that. They're covered in this spicy seafood sauce, which I'm excited about. And Nongshim has worked with me multiple times in the past, and they were kind enough to literally supply a cabinet full of SHIN LITE ramen. So this is what we're eating. This is probably my favorite ramen right now at this point in time because the noodles are air dried. That means it's 75% less fat and 25% less calories. It tastes chewier.
We eat this way too much.
I know. Wow.
I don't know why we're digging in this first.
I don't know either. We've literally never tried the New Zealand Scampi. I also have kimchi down below.
So good.
Wow. It's perfectly chewy. It's got like a bouncy noodle texture. Spicy though.
Okay, I'm going in. Look at the size of this.
Usually I use the black gloves because they don't make noise, but I ran out, so. Wow, this looks intense. It's kind of intimidating. So, ooh. Wow. Okay, so that's what that looks like on the inside. I kind of don't want to suck on the head of this one just because I don't know what's going on in here, but for you guys I will. Wow, what a sacrifice, Stephanie.
It's pretty good.
Wow, the head's good. Oh my gosh.
It's actually kind of sweet. This is kind of
nice.
nice.
The head is kind of sweet. I'm kind of confused.
How do you describe this?
So definitely the actual meat part of this looks more like a lobster. Like it doesn't have like that easy peeling aesthetic of a shrimp. Try that.
It's kind of hard to peel.
Mmm.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's very difficult to peel. You know what? I'll peel it for you.
Thank you so much. Wow. Normally he doesn't do this, but it's because when I'm filming, you guys get so mad when I don't peel it well. We got some egg, put some lemon on it. Bits.
Look at how nice and white the meat is.
Yeah. It doesn't have like that pinkness, which is weird. Okay.
Is it
Wow.
good?
Wow. Imagine the textures of a lobster, but all in one bite. I feel like sometimes the lobster tail, you have to be so careful cooking it because it can get chewy.
Yes, yes.
Can get too cooked. I don't know if we got lucky with this one and just cooked it so well this time, but it's buttery. Like I never understood buttery lobster. That entire idea kind of just went over my head. But this one, I can truly say the word to describe it is buttery, slightly sweet.
Wow, I'm Gordon Ramsay. Look at these words she's using.
Vocab.
Look at these eggs though.
I'm gonna go in on this egg and then we're gonna get into today's story because today's story is juicy. It's intense. Wow, thank you so much. Wow. That egg is really out here doing things right now. Today we're going to be talking about a case which I've heard about for quite some time and I never really wanted to touch up on it because it makes me really nervous. It gives me a little bit of just an uneasy feeling because it's one of the cases that is often used when people talk about how to survive a kidnapping. And this 14-year-old girl did it to a T. A lot of people say that she is probably, you don't really want to rank people like that, but they would say if they had to create a textbook or a book and the first thing would be telling you how to escape a kidnapper and how to stay alive in an aggressive situation like that where you really just have no power, she'd be one of the first chapters because she was that smart, she was that good, and a lot of it has to do with she also got lucky near the end. And it gives me a little bit of that anxious feeling because of how scary the situation is. And one of the things that this kind of brought up the topic was how do police decide what to put out into the press? So you have a case that starts, let's say somebody goes missing. You don't know at this point, it's not 100% verifiable if they've been kidnapped or they're a runaway. You know, typically unless there's a ransom note, most of the times it's kind of just they get very vague. They call it a missing persons case. So how do the police decide what information to release? I started looking into it. And the first thing that I realized is that it's actually not as convoluted as I thought it'd be. I thought there would be like this crazy system of what the police is allowed to say in the first 48 hours, what they're not allowed to say, blah, blah, blah. But apparently it's not that intense. So they purposely hide a couple key crucial facts about the case, not just because of the case, but also because when they catch someone who might be affiliated with the killer or is the killer or the criminal, they want to make sure it's that person. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to catch them slipping up about things that weren't in the press.
What does that mean?
You know, so let's say they talk about how someone was kidnapped from a house and they'll talk about all of the things that happened in the house. It was burglarized, this happened. But they'll leave out the fact that, you know, somebody left a shoe there. So the press has no idea that they're working with a shoe.
Yes.
But then, you know, someone that they're interrogating will come in and be like, oh yeah, I heard the killer left a shoe. You could measure my feet. I bet you it won't fit. And they're like, huh, how do you know they left a shoe?
So they're setting out traps.
Yeah.
Ah. I feel like a lot of these strategy could be used in life. You know?
I go into the car, I'm like, huh, why is there a panty here? I'm just kidding. Wow, this one looks like a shrimp. Are you eating? I feel bad.
Yeah, I've been eating.
I'm like, I feel bad. Mine. Sorry. Ooh, let's get some lemon on this one. I think this one will be. Oh, wow.
You completely missed it.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try one more time.
I just
missed
got
it
it all
again.
over.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Let's go with the lemon. Wow. It also works for the alternative because very strange, but a lot of people like to do false confessions to crimes that they did not commit. So a lot of people will come into the police interrogation room and they'll say, hey, listen, I'm the one that murdered that person. And then they'll be like, oh, really? Is that so? And they just want to confirm that this is the right person. This is the killer that they're looking for. And because of that, they'll ask, did you leave anything behind at the crime scene? Yeah. And they'll say, maybe a wallet? And they'll be like, no, you left behind a shoe, you bozo. And that's when they realize this is not the killer. This is somebody who's just pretending to be the killer. For whatever reason, it's strange. I feel like I might have to do an entire video on false confessions because it's a little weird. Like the mentality and just the psychology behind it is very, very strange that you want notoriety over anything else in life, whether it's really bad. And so that all brings me to the case of Abby Hernandez. Now, Abby Hernandez was 14 when she was kidnapped, and this story is very, very intense. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through it chronologically at first. So Abby Hernandez was 14 and she was in school at the time, at high school. And the last place that people saw her was school, and she was seen from the school security cameras walking home. So she had left the parking lot, she did not get on a bus, and she did not get into anybody's car.
I feel like you talked about a few cases that's kidnapped and then they somehow escaped, right?
Like Elizabeth Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, kidnapping cases are so scary to me.
And that whole movie Room, just creepy. How would you teach our kids? Do you say never talk to someone, or somebody give you candy, never listen, never follow to someone? Or...
Never listen, never talk.
So you go for that route, because there's other people who say don't be scared.
No, I would say like just tell people.
Excuse me while I go get my dad, who's an LAPD officer, retired Navy SEAL, was a former president. Let me go get Secret Service.
This happens in a small little town of New Hampshire in 2013, October to be exact. And now this case is very strange because you have this 14-year-old girl who's in high school. She was doing everything correctly. So she lived with her mom and I believe one other sibling, and she was pretty close with her dad at the time. He was living in, I want to say, out of state. It seemed like she had a very, very good and healthy family life for a 14-year-old. She loved her family. She loved her mom specifically. You know, she had a boyfriend at the time. It didn't seem like anything weird was happening there. It didn't seem like anything weird was happening at school either. It didn't seem like she was talking to an older boy. Didn't seem like she was, you know, hanging out with the wrong crowd. So it just seemed weird to her mom when around 7:30 she realized that Abby had not come home from school yet. She had let her mom know, hey mom, I'm going to be walking home from school today and I'll see you later. So she gets concerned. And so her mom heads over to the school and tries to figure out, is she still there? That's a type of fear I'm glad I don't have to feel yet.
When you have kids?
Yeah, like the fear of like your kid not being home. Like I can't even imagine the panic. Do you think you'd be panicked if our kid was like,
I'll be home. I'm walking home from school.
And then she's like not home from school?
Probably, but I don't know. I'm trying to be a cool dad. That's my 2020 New Year resolution.
We're not even trying to have kids this year. What kind of plan are you on? What just happened? Okay. At this point, this is where it starts getting strange. Her mom goes to the school. They say, hey, we saw her walking out. They check security footage. There she is walking out alone with a small bag. Now, this is very pertinent to the information because it showed that she did not pack in advance, which is what a lot of runaways would do at the time. And so she had just the clothes on her body and a tiny little bag, like a little backpack that was deflated. I was going to say like my boobs, but I'm trying to be nicer to myself in 2020, so never mind. She walks out of the school and her mom immediately alerts the police officers that she says, you know, my kid is missing. She goes to all of her friends and family, and because this was such a small town vibe, they just went in. They were like, we're gonna do an entire search party. Like people literally closed down their businesses to go help search for Abby Hernandez. Wow. Now, I'm also thinking that the reason that this happened was because at the time it was 3 days till her birthday, and she was actively planning the shit out of her birthday party. She was so excited to turn 15. She was like, oh, I'm gonna have this type of party. She already invited people, you know, people already RSVP'd. And so it just seemed strange. It didn't seem like a runaway type of situation. Yeah. And the fact that she was, you know, walking home, the police searched her cell phone, and her cell phone reception went dark around 1 mile from her house. So up until that point, she had been casually texting her boyfriend, and then immediately, no cell service. A mile away from her house.
Okay.
So again, this is all very, very strange. Now the press, the local news, they immediately pick up on it. They start running stories. The press is out there, you know, the police officers are doing press conferences. Her mom is out there saying, Abby, please come home, please come home. And at this point, it is still categorized as just a missing persons case. This is where it gets strange. Weeks pass and life moves on, and people slowly stop searching for Abby Hernandez.
Yeah.
And her mom at the time, you know, she said it is a very interesting situation because you have all of this, first of all, pain, grief, sorrow, but also adrenaline of your kid being missing, and everyone's trying to help you, but then slowly nobody cares anymore. But you're still looking with the same amount, if not more passion than before, but nobody wants to help you anymore because it's old news. And so she said that she pretty much gave up on life at that point. Like, she wasn't paying bills, like she wasn't doing any of her day-to-day tasks. Like, all she could think about was Abby. And so she hadn't picked up her mail from her P.O. box in months. So one day she finally goes, you know, she's trying to get her life in order. She opens it up and she sees a letter and she drops it. She picks it up and it's from Abby. And so she says, what? So she immediately rushes into the car and she opens it up, and it's very cryptic. It's a very cryptic message along the lines of, Mom, I'm fine. I'm sorry I had to do this. So it doesn't say that she ran away, but it almost seems like she's hinting that she did. But her mom doesn't believe this letter because it's strange. Just nothing about this makes any sense. Like, why would she run away? You know, and typically if she did run away and she has the freedom to write a letter, she would write, I did this because of this, you know?
So the way that the letter was written was
just weird, you know? She was like, this is not my daughter. And so she immediately takes it to the police. This is where the police and their information gets really tricky. So she takes it to the police and they're sitting on this letter and they go, okay, this is where everything is complex, because right now the people in this town, in this city, they care and love for Abby Hernandez, but they're not really looking anymore. But if we release it, everything could go wrong. So if they don't release it, the people keep continuing to forget about Abby Hernandez and the search doesn't ramp up. Now, if they release it, there's a lot of bad things that can happen there too, which is, let's say she is with a kidnapper and somehow she did finesse this letter to go out, and the kidnapper is watching the news, realizes Abby wrote a letter, that could pretty much end her life.
Yeah.
So now they have to think in the perspective of, okay, if she is kidnapped and they do see that she wrote this letter, what happens then? They also have to factor in public opinion. So yes, you want people talking about Abby Hernandez, so they'll look for her. But if a letter like this is showed, a lot of people might think that she's a runaway. And then it'll just backfire. Not only will they not look for her, it's like the complete opposite, you know? So they sit on this letter and finally they decide to release the letter to the press. So press gets a hold of this letter, and it is not good.
Pregnant, runaway, punk-ass kid. She better pay the police force back. She better get arrested when they catch her.
People went in on this 14-year-old girl. 14! And the police, you would think, you know, her mom was worried. Abby's mom was really worried when the press's opinion started to change, because it went from, you know, let's look for Abby Hernandez together to this punk-ass kid is probably pregnant. Like, it literally backfired that much. And
Is
so,
she pregnant?
No, she
what
literally
the
was
fuck?
kidnapped. But her mom is initially worried because what if the police sees this and they say, okay, well, the people don't want us to work on it. And technically, the police are supposed to be working for the people and the state and the government, you know?
Yeah.
And so what if they decide to drop the case and they believe that she's a runaway? But the
Yeah.
police, they absolutely did not believe that, because when they searched the Hernandez's house, they found tons of cash in Abby's room. Not tons of, to be like weird, but like her savings, like her birthday money and stuff. And it's just weird for a kid to first not turn on her cell phone when she runs away. They're not that smart. You know, you're not working with like Edward Snowden where they know how to like disappear off the grid. You're working with a 14-year-old who wants to talk to people. Usually when you're 14, you run away so you can talk to boys more.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't know.
Now, I'm going to tell you what actually happened to Abby Hernandez. She was not pregnant. She was not a spoiled brat. She was not a teenager who was upset with her parents or anything like that. She was actually just a young girl excited for her birthday and birthday shoes. I'll get into it.
Birthday shoes?
Thank you for the... so at this point, Abby leaves school. And what's interesting about this day is that she got an early birthday present, which was a pair of boots from her mom. And so she was wearing those boots for the first day. And so she put on those boots, went to school, and she decided, you know what, the weather's nice, and sometimes I walk home, so I'm just gonna walk home. It's a multiple mile walk. But you're 14, you got stamina, you do it. And so she starts walking, she's texting her boyfriend, Jimmy, I believe, and they're just having casual conversation. And a mile from her house, at this point, her feet were in just utter pain. Like, these are new boots, so she has blisters all over her feet. I mean, she's already walked over a mile in these boots. And after a long day at school, I'm sure it was only worse. I don't know if you guys remember that feeling. I remember so many times in high school where I'd have new sneakers or something, and I would just have so many blisters, and I'd have to ask for Band-Aids to like put them around the shoe and shit. She was kind of feeling that. And so all of a sudden this car pulls up, and it's a dude, maybe early 30s. He looks pretty nice. He's wearing a baseball cap, and he's like, hey, why are you walking? It's dangerous. Do you want to get in? Like, do you want me to drive you somewhere? Do you want me to drive you to your house? Yeah. And she said she normally wouldn't have, but her feet were hurting. But on top of that, he just seemed really nice. Like, this is a small town. You don't really have stranger danger. It's not in the middle of like Manhattan or like Los Angeles, where you do have a lot of, you know, people and strangers. It's a small town. So she says, okay. So she gets into the front seat, but she said, you know, even then I was being extra careful. And so I didn't tell him my home address. I said, hey, can you drop me off at this restaurant? And this restaurant was like on the intersection of where her house is. Yeah. And so then he's like, yeah, okay, sounds good. But then all of a sudden he drives past that restaurant. And so she's like, oh, wait, I wanted to go to that restaurant. That's where you can drop me off. And he goes, oh, no worries. I just need to pick up something from Home Depot right now. And it's kind of just, it would be on the way. This is when she slowly starts getting a little bit nervous. Now, they pull into the Home Depot in broad daylight. Now, this parking lot is massive. And he decides to park at the very end, furthest away from the building. Yeah. And this is when she started to feel very, very, very alarmed. Yeah. And so at this point, she's fumbling to take off her seatbelt. And she says, thanks for the ride. Actually, Home Depot is like right here. I have friends who live right around the block. I'm just going to go to my friend's house. And she's about to open the door. And he's fumbling in his jeans. And he pulls out a gun.
Oh my gosh.
And he points it at her. And he says, don't move or I'll kill you. And so obviously she doesn't move. And then he says, okay. And he takes off his cap, throws it onto her head, and pushes it down so it's kind of covering her face, puts a blanket on top of her from the back seat, and grabs handcuffs from his glove compartment and handcuffs her. So this guy, I mean, it didn't seem like he stalked Abby Hernandez, but it seemed like he was waiting for any opportunity to kidnap any girl.
Oh my gosh.
And so he handcuffs her, points the gun at her, and says, don't scream, don't try to do anything. And he starts driving. Now, she doesn't know where they're going. She just feels like they're going up the mountains using the back roads. And she kind of looks up a little bit. And all of a sudden, she said she felt one of the worst pains in her leg ever. And so at that point, she's like, oh my God, for sure he just shot my leg. And she looks down, and there's no blood gushing everywhere. And so she looks a little confused. And she realizes that it's a stun gun. He starts driving, and he asks for her phone. She gives it to him, and he breaks it in half. She said that she was so panicked at this point, she didn't know what to do. So she started singing Amazing Grace. She starts kind of singing it. She's just trying to calm her nerves. And so he goes,
oh, do you want to listen to music?
And he starts playing music for her. And so at this point, she feels like this guy he's evil, you know, but it seems like maybe I can win at this. And so she starts saying things like, you know, you look like a smart guy. Like, if you let me go, I'm not going to say anything. You know, I get it. We all make mistakes. And she starts saying these things that are very sympathizing with him.
Is that a bad thing to say? I wonder. We all make mistakes.
Just depends, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it backfires. You know, I've read about it, and some people say that you should never try to get like a psychopath to sympathize because they will never be able to.
That's true.
And then some people say sometimes maybe they're not a full-on psychopath, so maybe they might be able to.
What if you just over-psychopath them?
See, that's what I had in mind. This has nothing to do with Abby's story.
And this is me being an idiot for 2 seconds.
If anyone ever tries to kidnap me, I don't think they will.
I got you. You poop on demand and you throw it at them. Yes.
Yes!
Got it.
Yes!
High five up top. That's what I'm teaching our kids.
My hand's dirty.
You know, and you just gotta give them the crazy eyes. I don't think it's gonna work, but that's my theory. And so she starts singing Amazing Grace, and he starts, you know, playing this music, and she starts sympathizing with him, and it seems weird. And so they go up all the way into the mountains, and they pull up into this really, really small town of Gorham. I think there's only like 2,000 people living there. It's like a mountainside town. He pushes her into this, I want to call it a trailer, like a shipping container. He had purchased it for around $3,000. I didn't know you could purchase those. And he brings her into it and pretty much keeps her shackled in there for the next 9 months of Abby Hernandez's life. Mind
is he
you,
living there?
she's 14, so his house is right next to it. And this is a neighborhood, so it's not even like the middle of nowhere and this shipping container in the woods.
Yeah.
But prior to this, he had completely soundproofed the entire shipping container so no one would be able to hear her. So she's in there.
Was she locked up or?
Yeah, she was chained up for 9 months. Obviously, the first day was horrendous. He did a lot to her. Yeah. You know, she was tied up by her hands and feet, and he would duct tape her eyes shut, and then he would put a t-shirt over her head, and then put a helmet over the t-shirt so that she couldn't see what was happening. Yeah. And this was just very horrendous. Again, she said that she never cried until he brought a phone to her and showed a press conference of her mom. And she said that was the first time she cried. Because her entire thing was, I'm just gonna be alive. Like, I'm gonna make it out alive. A lot of psychologists, you know, they didn't actually interview her, but there was a psychologist that was working with the interviewers, and they saw her footage of how she was telling her story. And a lot of people, even after Abby Hernandez was proven to be kidnapped, they didn't believe her. Because she doesn't act the way a victim should. Because the way she talks about it is very matter of fact. This is what happened. This is what I did, and I survived.
Did you see the interview?
Yeah, it's not very emotional. She's very I thought she's brave, but a lot of people thought she faked it. The interviewers, they showed psychologists about it, psychiatrists, and they said, you know, there's not one mold for every victim. And the way she does it, it's almost like as if she split a little bit of herself away. You know, this is the way that she is able to handle what happened. It's almost like she can talk about it matter of fact because it's not part of her anymore. And this had been multiple days had passed, and he sat me down one day. And at this point, he was always wearing like masks and stuff, and I never saw his face. And he always kept saying like, forget my face, forget what I look like. She had no idea what his name was, no idea anything about him really. And he said, here, gave her a pen and pencil, a paper and pencil, and write your mom a letter. Make it seem like you ran away, right? And so she wrote this letter, and he wasn't looking. And so she decided to grab her fingernail and kind of trace out kidnapped, help me. And then she folded it up, put it on the envelope, and he found out. And she said this was one of the most painful things she's experienced. He grabbed the stun gun and put it directly at the bottoms of her feet and just kept. And so he made her rewrite a letter, much to her surprise. And he watched her, and so she wrote this very cryptic letter. He sent it, and she was kind of just stuck in there. And she said there was a lot of torture in all different aspects, and he actually had a job. So he would go 9 to 5. He was actually a machinist at a gun shop.
He makes guns?
Yeah. And so he would have to commute 35 minutes every day and leave her in the shipping container, not in the middle of the woods, but in a neighborhood that was soundproofed. And just to be extra sure that she wouldn't scream, he would literally just tape up everything and then play the loudest rock music in that shipping container so that if she were to scream, it sounded like part of the music.
What?
Yeah, I can only imagine. Like, I know it sounds stupid compared to everything else she's been through, but just imagine the sheer mental torture of like 9 hours of that every day. Like, you can't even get a second to like think in silence, just like for one freaking second. And then finally he said, you know what, this is too inhumane, is what he told her. And so he bought her a dog shock collar so that she wouldn't scream while he's at work, and it would shock her. And she said that hurt a lot. And her main thing was she felt like she couldn't escape, so her main thing was to really play the mind game that he's trying to play. And so eventually he started opening up to her, and, you know, she just went along with anything that he wanted to do. She just almost made it seem like they were friends, you know? Eventually, he started talking about how he wants to print counterfeit money because, you know, he was in juvie when he was young and the government owes him anyway. And so she's like, yeah, let's do it. I'll help you. And so because she was always encouraging, like eventually he even threw her into the back of his trunk, started driving her around. And so she felt like, oh my God, why are we going somewhere even further away from my house? And she started singing American Pie, which is an 8-minute song. And so that's how she kept track of time in the trunk because she wanted to see how long the distance was further away. But what she didn't know is that he drove in circles. And then he parked right back at the shipping container while she was blindfolded and dragged her into a different part of the shipping container that had a mattress on it. And it was more of a room. And so she was to stay in that room, and there was wires on the door and said that, you know, it was tripped to explode if anyone opened it from the inside or something like that, right? And she believed it. I mean, everyone would believe it. So at this point, they start developing, I don't want to say a relationship or a friendship. She's very, very, very intelligent. I don't know what else to say. She starts playing into his ego, you know, because the one thing that she remembered is that it's almost like he wants to teach her things. Like the way he talks about even counterfeit money, it's almost in a very teaching way. And so then she would play that role of like, oh, I want to know. I don't know anything. Please tell me more. And that would kind of feed his ego. And then he ended up getting more and more comfortable with her. And they ended up, he even ended up giving her books to read because she was bored. And so she started reading books and all of these things. And now what's interesting is that all the while this was happening, his name is Nathaniel Kibbe, Nate Kibbe. And she actually found that out because he had passed her a cookbook to read. And he said, if you're going to get married one day, you have to learn how to cook for your man. And so she was reading this cookbook and it said Nate Kibbe on the corner. And she looked up and she says, who's Nate Kibbe? And he looked at her and said, how do you know my name? They just kind of looked very uncomfortable. It didn't seem like he got mad at her for knowing it, you know, just because it was in the cookbook. And so she knew his name. But what's even crazier is the police knew his name. So Nathaniel Kibbe has actually always had brush-ins with the law. He's had a lot of violent disputes that required the law enforcement to take over. Ever since he was young, he was in and out of juvie, and he has quite the gun collection. Now, that's not what's alarming to the police officers. What is alarming is that during this time, during this 9 months, he gets into a fender bender with another car. Now, this fender bender, which could have been easily resolved by, hey, this is a fender bender, let's trade insurances, he turned it into an assault charge by assaulting the other person that he got into a fender bender with, like punching him. And so then the police came and they arrested him and they said, listen, it's just a fender bender.
You didn't have to punch the person.
So obviously, we look up your history, you've got some criminal history, and it also seems like you have registered guns. You're gonna need to hand those guns over. And he said, you know what, that's fine. And the police thought that was weird, because usually people who are into their guns, they're into their guns. And they said, that's weird, that he just would be like, yeah, okay. And so the police didn't think anything of it, and they said, okay, well, we're gonna have to confiscate them. The judge is gonna have to rule this. And all of a sudden, the police department gets a call one day. It's from Nathaniel Kibbe, and he goes,
hey, just so you guys know, I have all the guns packed up if you want to come pick it up.
which again is strange because the judge didn't even order for them to be picked up yet.
Yeah.
So it's like he's going above and beyond. And so they roll up and they see this house and there's this random shipping container there. Nathaniel Kibbe is waiting at the front door. And he has this little table set up and there on display are all of his guns. And he said,
yeah, I moved them out. Here you go.
And the police are like, and they're like, are you sure nothing else is in the house? And he's like,
Nope, these are all the guns that are registered to me. You can double check. These are all here. There you go.
So the police are like, well, they have no legal grounds to look. And they also don't suspect that, you know, this has anything to do with Abby Hernandez.
Yeah.
So they haul all the guns into the trunk and they drive away. So that's a little strange to police, but again, no legal grounds. And this is where it gets even stranger, is there is a woman by the name of Lauren. Now, Lauren is going to be the key pivotal point in Abby Hernandez escaping. So a woman by the name of Lauren meets Nate Kibbe, but he goes by Jay at the time. And so they meet at a hotel bar for a date and they start drinking. And they decide to go back to her hotel room to rendezvous, right? And he seems normal. She said it didn't seem like he's violent or anything like that. And so they rendezvous and he said, you know what, I'm going to pay for the hotel room. And so he left 3 $50 bills on the counter. And she said, okay, that's kind of cool. And so she fell asleep. Now the next morning she heads over to Walmart. And I guess she had paid the hotel with her credit card and she had kept the cash. Now she goes to Walmart and she's paying for some groceries and stuff and hands over the money. And then all of a sudden the Walmart cashier is like, hold on a second, ma'am. And then calls over the Walmart security, calls over the managers, and then the police get called. because it was counterfeit bills.
Oh my god.
And so she's sitting in the police interrogation room and she's saying, you know what, this fucker, like, I went on a date with him. The least you could have done is at least not say you're going to pay for my hotel bill. Why would you? She literally went on to interview to say this. She said, you can fuck with anything you want, but don't fuck with my freedom. Because she almost went to jail. It's illegal to use counterfeit bills. So she's like, how dare you? Yeah. And so she was able to trace him down on Facebook and she messaged him that. She said, you never play with my freedom, boo-boo. Not today, boo-boo. And she said, whatever you got going on in your basement, I would wrap it up because they're coming. So she literally, she's like hardcore. She's like, yeah, they're coming for you. You better watch out. And so this is when Nate Kibbe, he starts panicking. If the police come with a search warrant for counterfeit money, it's not going to be like, let me search your basement. It's going to be, let me search every single thing that you've ever touched, owned, and where you work, where you live, where you sleep, everything. Yeah. And so he's like, I cannot be caught for kidnapping. So then he throws Abby Hernandez into a car, puts a cap on her, and she's like, what the fuck is going on? And they drive to a Dairy Queen. She said it was strange because it was almost like a farewell meal. And so they eat Dairy Queen together in public with her cap on. So she's eating the Dairy Queen, and then all of a sudden, he pulls up like a block away from where she lives. And then he's like, here, you gotta go. And so she's like, oh. So then she jumps out at the intersection and he drives away.
Just like that?
Just like that. But you know what's even crazier? Is that he manipulated her so much into believing that she could never, ever say anything about him because he's got eyes everywhere. She rushes home. There's literally security footage of her entering her home for the first time because her mom had set up cameras. And she opened the door and she was like, Mom? And she said, this was the first time in the interview I also saw her get super emotional, was she said that it was just really hard to see because her mom looked different. Her mom just looked really stressed and aged. And she said that broke her heart. And her mom was like, this can't be real. And she was so excited. And for the next week, Abby Hernandez refused to tell anyone the name of her kidnapper because she was so scared. And then finally her mom was like, nobody is going to get you. And then she's like, no, Mom, it's not about me. Like, he's going to come kill you. And she's like, no, they're not. He's not going to come kill me. He's not going to come kill you. We're going to get him. Yeah. And so they walk into the police station and they give the name. Nathaniel Kibbe. And he gets immediately arrested. Abby's really brave. Even during court and trial and all of that, she stared him down. She didn't look away. She didn't try to like hide or, you know, she stared him down the entire time. At this point, Nate Kibbe had reclaimed his guns, and so they went in with SWAT teams because they were expecting a massive fight. But, you know, the police officer, one of the police officers who was also interviewed, he was actually someone who had heard of Nathaniel Kibbe when he was younger. And mind you, he's in his 30s now, but had heard about him in his teens and said, yeah, no, I didn't think there was going to be a fight because Nate Kibbe only picks on people who are defenseless. And the SWAT team ain't defenseless. And so there was no shots fired. Yeah, he got arrested and he was sentenced to...
What was his whole attitude?
Yeah. And he got 45 to 90 years in prison, which really isn't a lot. But Abby's moved on. She is pregnant now. Yeah. So she's pregnant. She has a wonderful boyfriend that she loves. And she's really brave. It was almost crazy listening to her because she's saying, the only thing I can say to anybody else is just have hope. Just have hope every day. A lot of the police detectives who were on Abby's case were also interviewed, and they said one of the most heartbreaking things about the case wasn't the crime itself, which is incredibly heartbreaking, you know? But it was the fact that even after trial and court, and the main detective, what they were saying is that Abby gave us details about what happened to her were so beyond the realm of what you think might have happened. It was just so bad. And for everything that she said, there was at least 10 pieces of evidence to back her up that they found at Nate Kibbe's. Yeah. But they said that even after that, even after trial and court and the sentencing, a lot of people don't believe Abby. A lot of people say she set this entire thing up. Nate Kibbe was probably a boyfriend she ran away with and then decided, I don't want to run away with my boyfriend anymore. And the police are just like, how does that make sense? How does that make sense? Like, it doesn't make sense.
That's very sad.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, it looks like Abby doesn't give a shit. I mean, I'm sure she does, but thankfully it's not something that's really
Yeah.
hurting her. Because
Yeah.
it seems like she seems like such a strong person. She's like, you know, I'm gonna have hope. I'm moving on. I'm starting my own family. That's the story of Abby Hernandez. It's very, very like inspiring because she's so young and so strong and so brave. But it's also very scary that there are people like that out there. And that there's also people like that out there that still don't believe her, which mind-blowing. But let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think that's crazy? Do you think she got lucky, or do you think she played it too, you know? Because a lot of people think she got lucky because of Lauren. I don't really think so, but
Yeah.
let me know in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye!